Who can replace Nick Saban? Well, it's going to take a few years to figure that out. Who wants to replace Nick Saban? Who will replace Nick Saban? Those are the questions to be answered in the next 48 hours or so. Stephen M. Smith, Touchdown Alabama, also his show In My Own Words right here on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6:30 Central Time. Stephen, quite a couple days in Tuscaloosa as the greatest of all time decides to retire, and now we're trying to figure out who is going to be next up to replace a legend.
It is crazy, Mark. I mean, in 2007, all eyes were on Tuscaloosa. People were waiting with bated breath. Who's going to be the guy? Nick Saban comes through the door. He and Miss Terry. You enjoy that ride for 17 years. So it's only fitting that 17 years later, at around the exact same time, the narrative rewrites itself. All eyes are on Tuscaloosa again. Nick Saban announced his retirement on Wednesday, shocked a whole lot of people. And now you're waiting on who is going to take the responsibility to come behind a man that has been nothing short of remarkable through a consistent almost 20-year run at one program.
It's astonishing, and we will certainly talk Nick Saban, whether it be in this record and have plenty of time throughout the offseason, because the numbers speak for themselves. And of course, if you've just watched football for the last 17 years just at Alabama, you know that he is either undoubtedly the greatest or arguably the greatest of all time. So getting to the matter at hand, Stephen, Dan Lanning originally emerged as a front runner. He disregarded that, certainly proved that he is staying at Oregon. Steve Sarkisian at Texas, also being bantied about. He has confirmed that he's staying in Austin. We've got Kalen DeBoer gaining a lot of steam in the media. We've got Mike Norvell, Florida State, of course. And then we've got Tommy Rees gaining some traction and some support within the building. So your thoughts about those candidates?
Well, like you mentioned, Mark, Dan Lanning was the first name, but he is sticking with the Oregon Ducks. He's made that known on social media. Steve Sarkisian was thrown in there. Sark looks like he's gotten a contract extension with Texas, so he's staying there in Austin. And then Mike Norvell, just as a couple of minutes ago, Florida State has worked out a new deal with him. So he is staying with the Seminoles. So Mike Norvell, Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian all out. Kalen DeBoer has went from the wild card name to the hottest name right now. This young man, this guy from Washington, 49 years of age, has won everywhere he's been at, whether it's been at Sioux Falls, which is our NAIA program, whether it's been at Fresno State in the Western Athletic Conference, and now here recently at Washington, where he's compiled a 25-3 record, including 14 wins last year, getting Washington to a Pac-12 championship, got it back to the college football playoff for the first time since 2016, and a guy in DeBoer who helped Michael Penix Jr., two-time 4,000-yard quarterback, a Heisman Trophy frontrunner, a guy that will go to the NFL draft, and Michael Penix, he helped Washington produce a 1,000-yard back from the program, helped Washington produce two 1,000-yard receivers. So Kalen DeBoer, an elite offensive mind. He has an overall coaching record of 104-12. The guy has been a winner everywhere. He's the hottest name right now. Behind him, surprisingly, is actually Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is actually the number 2 name right now. Of course, we all know Kiffin has history with Coach Sabin, was an offensive coordinator at Alabama for 3 years, 2014 to 2016. He's been nothing but giving compliments to Coach Sabin, been highly respectful of a man that gave him an olive branch of an opportunity to rewrite his own coaching story when nobody else did. So Lane Kiffin is a name that is out there still strongly. When you look at Tommy Rees, he is getting consideration, but he's not a front runner. Michael Locksley's name's been thrown in here. somebody who has been an offensive coordinator at Alabama before, back in 2018. Once again, consideration, but not a true front runner. So the two main guys in the heat of this, Mark, Kalen DeBoer and Lane Kiffin, they're the two in the heat of this. A third name that may sneak its way in there, Glenn Schumann, who's the co-DC at Georgia. He's got ties to Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. If you couldn't get Kalen DeBoer, if you couldn't get Lane Kiffin, do you make the move and go grab 33-year-old Glenn Schumann to be your next head coach? That would be surprising. That'd be very intriguing, but he's kind of a third name inching his way in here.
Going back to Lane Kiffin, obviously he and Sabin had an interesting relationship there at Alabama. There was a lot of angst at the time, but they made each other better, and they certainly have credited each other since then. I don't think there's an SEC Media Days or a game week between Ole Miss and Alabama that comes up where Lane Kiffin doesn't give a ton of credit for learning so much under Nick Saban, learning how to run a program, learning how to present himself in a different way, and that Nick Saban doesn't credit Lane Kiffin for revamping the offense, updating the offense, providing so many different ways of matching up marquee players and really being a guru on that side of the ball. So just your thoughts about Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin, and then also Saban and how important it is that he gives his blessing, do you think, to the administration's choice?
I think it's huge, and especially if it is Kiffin. You look at Coach Sabin mentioned yesterday on an interview with Reese Davis of ESPN that he's been given an office above the stadium, so he is still going to be supporting the Alabama football program in some type of capacity. He made a joke about, hey, I can still chew players out from this building, from my office above the stadium, as if I was doing when I was down there on the field. So he is still planning on being a major support system, a major support factor in some way, shape, or form. So with that being said, if the name is Kiffin, you got to wonder how much of a blessing it will be for Kiffin to continue to pull from the wealth of knowledge that he started pulling from back in 2014 and did that for 3 years. So it'll be a major blessing for Kiffin. But even if it's not Kiffin, for Greg Byrne and the Board of Trustees to still have Coach Sabin help out in some way, shape, or form, not just for getting the new coach in here, but continuing to help keep the program together, and for Sabin to have that role to give his blessing, to have the new coach come in, to keep the program together, and to keep the majority of not just recruits, but players already in the program at Alabama to stay put, is a tremendous deal.
We have certainly seen coaches from outside this conference enter this conference and win big. Urban Meyer would be the classic example recently. Also, Brian Kelly off to a decent start at LSU, Dan Mullen and others. So there doesn't appear to be any type of Alabama lean or SEC lean to this decision necessarily.
It's not just due to, as much as you would love to see a Kiffin come in here, or as much as you'd love to see, somebody that Coach Sabin has worked with to come in here, people got to look at, if it is Kalen DeBoer, this is a big hire, because like I mentioned, he's won everywhere he's been at. You look at a Washington team that was a train wreck in 2021. He comes in here and it's no longer a train wreck. Washington's on fire. 25-3. Like I mentioned, his last 2 years with the Huskies, back-to-back 10-win seasons, 11-win seasons. This past year, gets Washington a Pac-12 championship, gets Washington back to the college football playoff for the first time since 2016, had Washington in the title game against Michigan. Kalen DeBoer, he's a program changer. He's a program creator. He's a culture creator. He's an offensive mind, one of the best out there. We see the game is transitioning to offense anyway. And you got to wonder, if it is DeBoer, does he bring Grubb, the OC, with him? Because if that becomes the case, whoa, because now you look at, where does Tommy Rees sit? Does Tommy Rees then become a quarterback coach and a recruiter? Is there some clause worked out in Tommy Reese's contract by Coach Sabin that he remains in some sort of capacity as a quarterback coach to help out the growth of Jalen Milroe? There's a lot of answers here. If DeBoer comes, does he bring Grubb with him, or does he help Grubb get the head coaching job at Washington? A lot of factors here on the table.
I would also think, Stephen, because this position draws almost every coach in the country, and they've got their pick at the litter. In addition to that, all eyes on Tuscaloosa and the gold standard of college football, that the approach, the look of the coach and how he deals with media, how he represents the university is important. Kalen DeBoer seems like a very likable guy, very respectful guy, classy individual. Lane Kiffin has certainly had his issues in the past, kind of spouts off, continues to do so to a certain extent, although in regards to his approach in building a program and dealing with the administration, he seems to have matured quite a bit. So any thoughts about them kind of trying to stay with, the look of what an Alabama coach should be?
That's definitely going through Greg Byrne's mind and the Board of Trustees' mind when you look at the grace that Nick Saban handled the media with for 17 years, the grace that Saban handled all podiums with, for that matter, for as long as he did. Yes, Saban would go off on tangents also. He would get mad also. He would spout off also. But Saban always had a calculated reason for it. So I guess that was the reason why the Board of Trustees and Greg Byrne were kind of okay with it, because Saban always had a reason as to why he would go off on tangents. And there was always a hidden message within the madness. Another reason as to why they were okay with Coach Saban kind of walking his own line there, as opposed to Lane Kiffin and Kalen DeBoer. DeBoer, when I watch his press conferences at Washington, like you mentioned, Mark, a very likable guy, says the right things, acts the appropriate way, definitely grown up in the room, but definitely knows how to vibe and relate to these young athletes in this new age of college football. Lane Kiffin, we have seen him greatly mature from what he once was, but we also know he has a way with social media. He has a way with X and Instagram and TikTok and all of these things. So I'm pretty sure, the Alabama administration staff is keeping an eye on that. But Kiffin also knows how to build a culture. We just saw him take Ole Miss to an 11-win season, winning the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl against Penn State. So you couldn't go wrong with either or. But if you had to look at the mind of Greg Byrne, he could go more so of the clean cut version of one Kalen DeBoer. But myself, covering Alabama football for as long as I have, Mark, I'm just waiting on when is the announcement coming so I can finally push the publish button on the story right here.
I hear you. And with that, we will let you go, Stephen, because as soon as it's announced, I'm sure within a few days, we'll get you back on here, get your impressions of that, because then we're going to see possible fallout in regards to the transfer portal. Although I got to think Kiffin and DeBoer in particular would keep most players in-house because they're proven winners, you would think.
Oh, absolutely. Now, of course, right now, a name to keep your eye on. Reports are already surfacing. Isaiah Bond, who would enter his junior season starting this spring, has filed paperwork to pursue the transfer portal and look at his options. That being Isaiah Bond, who was Alabama's leading receiver in terms of catches this past season. He was also huge on the 4th and 31 grave digger play to get the win over Auburn, and Jordan Hare, the 31-yard touchdown reception there from one Jalen Milroe. So keep all eyes there on Isaiah Bond, the native Georgian former four-star who came in the 2022 signing class, is putting paperwork together. Reports are saying putting paperwork together to pursue the NCAA transfer portal to weigh his options.
Folks, please like the video and subscribe. And of course, check out Stephen's show, In My Own Words, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on YouTube, 6:30 Central. Stephen, we so much appreciate it. We always go to you for these crucial times. And this is a crossroads in Alabama football history. And it should be interesting to see who the choice is.
I'm going to say this. I would not want to be Greg Byrne burning the oil right now. But here's a guy that, I'll leave with this. in terms of basketball, when Avery Johnson left, no one knew who would be the next guy. Nate Oates came out of nowhere from Buffalo, and he's been great for Bama men's basketball. Multiple SEC tournament championships. He's gotten Alabama to the NCAA tournament quite a few times since he's been here thus far. So Burns' track record good for the basketball head coach. So I'm thinking football-wise, he's got something brewing.